Hello and welcome to How to Edit Audio, brought to you by the Learning Technologies Lab. Before we get further, I'd like to go over an outline of what we'll be doing today, which includes an introduction on the average editing process, analyzing Soundwaves, which is checking for audio quality and where to edit, non-destructive editing paths, so methods for trimming and retaining good files, as well as tips for conversational audio, post-recording information, and best practices. The typical audio recording process includes knowing where to record. So you want to record in a quiet place with minimal noise in your environment. This includes fans, heaters, air conditioners, and washing machines, among others. You'll be recording with synchronous or live tools like Zoom and Teams, or with screen capture software such as Camtasia asynchronously. You'll need a microphone, computer or device, proper cables, a webcam, software to record and to edit. What to look for before, during, and after. You want to check your inputs, proof of recording, and where you'll be exporting to, as well as the mastered volume. The typical editing process includes knowing where to edit. You'll be using a digital audio workstation such as Reaper, Audacity, Audition, or FL Studio. What to look for during recording. Check the inputs, proof of recording, Soundwave size and shape, multiple tracks, mastered volume, clipping prevention, and muted or solo considerations. After recording, check the file format, the sample size, the channels, constant bitrate versus variable bitrate, the resample rate, export and render directory, and the project bounds and sources. Here are some digital audio workstations that you may choose to use. Some of these are open source and some of these are paid. A Soundwave is comprised of an envelope, which includes 4 parts: the attack, decay, sustain, and the release. This determines how long it takes for that piece of audio to hit its maximum amplitude or volume and how long it takes to fade out. The size of the sound wave largely equates to the volume of the audio. In the case of a speaker, each individual's envelope is around 1 to 2 words. The length is determined by the initial volume and length of the words or sound, and the attached sound waves are often short sounds in quick succession. An example here that I've drawn over a sound wave is of an envelope. So the initial part on the left is the attack, where the rising amplitude first hits its peak. It then begins to decay, where it holds most of that volume and duration, and then begins to release. This can best be thought of as maybe a single gesture or word. So some considerations on how to edit. Zoom in to see that you aren't removing part of your usable audio. Cut in between the attack and release of different words or sections. Relatively even dynamics for speech is ideal. Try to mix appropriately. Sending pieces of audio to muted tracks will help keep your progress. This is known as non-destructive editing and will help when you return to projects. An example here is of a sound wave where I've chosen to cut just off to the center. I'm imagining this sound wave as an unwanted gesture, such as an and the very small gesture here is possibly a breath. So to eliminate this, I've zoomed in, found where the audio begins, cut just before the attack of that gesture, and I'm going to edit it. These fades below in the red help keep attacks from sounding too harsh when you cut them. An example here we've used in Reaper, I'm inserting a new track so that I can begin to mute this gesture that I do not want. I'll then bring over the audio files on the right to make sure that it flows smoothly. So some considerations on knowing when to edit. Removing excess breaths may cause sound to be odd and waste your time when editing. Being selective with your editing can help keep speaking natural and save time. After removing sections of broken speech, readjust timing to keep the flow. Breaks in between different attacks and releases should be used to help identify where to edit, but listening to the audio is by far the most effective. The goal is to make sure the audio is intelligible and clean. Some post-production considerations would be that you have different speakers, roughly the same volume. The desired format is checked and ready for rendering. The sample rate is above 44.1 kHz. Ideally you're recording at 48 kHz or mastering to it. Gain is mastered between -0.4 and -0.6 decibels. And the bitrate is ideally 24-bit. For the source and bounds, in the example here with Reaper, I've chosen to include the entire project. and I'm using the master mix to record and finalize. I've also added a tail of 1 second to make sure that there's end audio and that it doesn't abruptly cut. Also in Reaper, with the sample rate, I've chosen 48,000 Hz in 2 channels, making it stereo. I'm resampling, if possible, to the highest possible quality. The format or bitrate I've chosen here is MP3 with a constant bitrate, meaning that every fragment of audio gets the exact same attention and quality, even if it uses less resources. My directory here I've chosen to browse, though I could simply export to the desktop. An example here of the amplitude with the lightest section is the headroom that I've allowed my audio. When recording, this is the distance between you and the microphone, but when exporting, this is the difference between the sound's peak amplitude and the sound's clipping. If the peak amplitude were to surpass this gray bounds, I would begin clipping and losing or damaging audio. 2 examples here, both in Reaper. I've chosen to raise the master volume by 0.3 decibels so that I can end up with a finished product of -0.4 on the right. Some resources and supports that may help you with your audio editing ventures include McMaster University's Learning Technologies Lab, as well as the Program for Faculty Development at the CPD office, CSU, the McPherson Institute, University Technology Services, as well as the McMaster Accessibility Hub. Some external resources that we've gone over a little bit today include Camtasia Basics, LinkedIn Learning through Lynda, as well as Reaper. If you have any questions, feel free to direct them to the Learning Technologies Labs. Thank you.